Focusing on some of the highlights of down to earth. Now first is fertile stubble. Now stubble pots have been developed where stubble, which is rich in nutrient like nitrogen, phosphorus, sulphur and potassium, can be used by the plant. So Project Pravaah, which is a social entrepreneurship, focuses on Enactus work on clean air solutions, and this actually utilizes the nutrients of the stubble in right amount to grow the plants in the stubble pots, which bloom earlier than the normal plants and have a longevity of 3 to 4 months higher. So these have some of the plants which have worked well in the stubble pots are devil's ivy, money plant, aloe vera and roses. So there are still more plants which are to be tested. Now the crop residue can be managed actively through happy seeder, which is used for sowing the crop, rotavator, which is for land preparation, zero till seed drill, which is for land preparation, baler, which is to collect the straw, paddy straw chopper, which is to cut the paddy stubble, and reaper binder, which is to harvest the paddy stubble. The next is in the tribal population, we have seen that the people are getting married at a late age and having fewer children, which is one of the responsible factors for reduced longevity and life expectancy. So 87% of the ST population in Madhya Pradesh belongs to Jhabua and Alirajpur, and we have seen some of the lowest life expectancies in these groups. It's believed that a person has a relatively lesser lifespan of 4 years as per one of the researches by the Research Institute of Compassionate Economics if a person belongs to a ST group from this region. This has also seen that the life expectancy for both the male and the female is relatively low, and the reasons have been nutritional problems, shift in the dietary patterns, poverty levels, traditional lifestyles, the remote levels and the dispersed population in these areas. Again, the infant mortality rate overall we have seen in the ST population has declined significantly, but yet is relatively higher. The life expectancy is significantly low. So here are some of the charts that you would have in the handouts, and you can refer those for your answer writing. The next is purchasing power parity. That's how much a person is able to pay to maintain a living standard, and it's believed that the tribal residents at Shivpuri in Madhya Pradesh say that because of the price their diets have been hit. And here is the diet chart which clearly shows that in 2020 versus 2022, sugar and onion are some of the things that have been lost from the table, and then the amount of the gram dal has increased little, but rest of all has significantly declined from the table. So that means there has been a reduction in the dietary patterns. The next is mining. Now Jharkhand's Gopinathpur Pahadi Basti is one of the rehabilitation or resettlement colonies of retired coal mine workers, and Dhanbad district is known as the coal capital. Now refinery has talked about the problems there. The basic civic amenities are not working, the healthcare is not good, the piped water connection is not available, electricity is just for 8 to 10 hours, and definitely this provides a weak framework. So in 2009, India government made it mandatory that all coal companies must prepare a coal mine closure plan with the mining plans and feasibility. However, if it is government owned, the plan must be approved by the Union Ministry of Code or the board of company. However, in 2013 it was revised that only the technical and environmental aspects need to be explained. So there are various guidelines which have been done, and it talks about the compensation as well. Now the concern is basically when a person resumes mining, the coal production, the rehabilitation of the communities around the closed mining areas, refilling and planting of the trees, removing the water problems and the electricity problems in those areas, and the rising coal demand on the other hand, which has increased nearly 63% from the current demand recently. Ukraine Russia war is again responsible for it. It is believed that the Food and Agricultural Organization of UN says that one of the 5 calories that we eat actually crosses one of the international borders, and therefore reinventing sustainable food production is important. If we look on to some of the statistics, we can see that advanced economies spend just 17% of their earnings on food. However, for sub-Saharan countries, it is up to 40%, which is significantly high. Now, war has affected nearly 36% of the wheat, 55% of palm oil, 17% corn, sunflower oil and soybean oil, and it is believed that 5 agricultural products which have 90% of the imports are wheat, palm oil, corn, sunflower oil and soya bean oil. Now Russia, Ukraine and Kazakhstan are one of the 6 world baskets, and Russia is the largest wheat exporter. Ukraine is the 6th in the list. If we talk about fertilizer, Russia tops in nitrogen, is second in potassium and is third in phosphorus. So all major fertilizers for the globe comes from Russia predominantly. 12% of the total food calories come from Russia and Ukraine, and they have nearly control to 30% of the wheat exports, 20% of maize exports and nearly 80% of the sunflower oil export, which is significantly high. Now various countries have faced the crisis because of the Ukraine Russia, and it's specifically Egypt, Philippines and Indonesia which are worst hit because of the wheat crisis. Now food crisis in countries like Honduras, Cameroon, Guatemala, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Mozambique and Kenya also depends on Russia-Ukraine war, because nearly 10 to 50% of the fertilizers come from these regions. So changes in the food production definitely needs to be embarked. It is believed that 50% of the average calories that we consume globally is from wheat and rice, which is one of the major chunks. 5 countries, India, China, Russia, Brazil and US, control 60% of the global food, and inflation comes down when agricultural trade becomes free and globalized. So 4/5 of the total food consumption in the world is still produced locally. That is extremely important to know, and therefore we need to understand that we need to build on commodities which can be manufactured indigenously, and agriculture which is more sustainable with the climate change and can be developed indigenously. So importing the food grains in low and middle income countries has been increasing and can go up to 2 to 3.5 times by 2050. So if we look onto the Great Grain Divide, we can see the major food producing areas. So these are the 6 major food producing areas inclusive of rice, corn, wheat and soy, and the remaining world is dependent predominantly on these regions for food supply. But there is an unfair equation, because food share as of the consumer price index is extremely high in sub-Saharan and eastern central parts of Europe, and the food price indices have zoomed after the Ukraine-Russia war. Now income inequality is another important topic that we need to discuss. One of the studies which has been released as the state of inequality in India says that if you are earning rupees 25,000 a month, you are among the top 10% in the country. So this study is commissioned by the Economic Advisory Council and shows that there is a wide gap between the rich and the poor. The top 1% grew by 15%, but the bottom 10% earnings fell by 1%. So the gap or the divide has increased significantly. Now World Environmental Day shows some of the important findings. The first is the oceans are heating up. So there have been frequent instances of marine heat waves, extreme hot patches of water. Stockholm Conference of 1972 talks about how global environment has been put on threat, environmental framework laws that we need to understand, and this is a chart to help you understand the major economic conferences and treaties over the years. So 2020 was the Stockholm 50 plus, and in 72 we had the UN Conference on Environment in Stockholm, Sweden. Now over the years there have been various conventions and conferences. The list has been given here, which would be available in the handout, important for you to know. Then as regards the human development, we have seen that indirect impacts such as unplanned urbanization has one of the major burdens on the natural resources, and the global population, which has increased to nearly 8 billion from 3.7 billion in the last 40 years, has been last 50 years has been another marker for responsible for depletion of natural resources. Now the average annual air the concentration of particulate matter 2.5 has been seen significantly high in the cities where it is mainly the Central East China and the Indo-Gangetic plains, and we have seen that this would remain an environmental risk and reason for most of the diseases globally. Among the land, we have seen that the patterns have been changing, and this has been affecting the food security, livelihood and the lives of the many. Agriculture, again, we have seen that water security and gender and social equality are some of the factors. For the water, we have seen that 9% of the population lives in an area would face chronic water shortage. Then we have 20 nations which would become water scarce as per as the UN guidelines. But by 2025, we believe 30 nations would be water scarce. By 2030, there would be a scarcity of 60% worldwide. And by 2050, 1 in 5 developing nations would face acute water shortage because the demand is expected to rise by 55%. The similar scene has been seen in the biodiversity, where we say an average 68% decrease in the population of the mammals, birds and amphibians has been reported. The next is another artistic gallery which has been released. My House is Ill is one of the exhibits which has been at the Khojo International Artist Association, at the studio of Khoj International Artist Association in New Delhi, and it says that blue is safe, red is in danger, and the whole theme of the exhibition works like that. Title, Does the Blue Sky Lie? And then as you walk in, you would see that there are various zones which exhibit different aspects. Similarly, there is Safarnama by Pakistan artist, which talks about the China-Pakistan economic corridor and its impact. Similarly, another display by Stockholm-based artist Hannah, which talks about the dismal quality of the air in the Beijing, which is the China's capital. Some other important news, like in Siberia, we had various regions where devastating wildfires have been witnessed. Vanuatu has been constantly pushing in to the International Court of Justice for impacts due to climate change. Brown locust has been found in the Nambia, and this is one of the species that has infested the crops significantly. Pantanal, which is the South America's one of the world's largest wetland, is now at a risk of collapse. Adverse biodiverse ecosystem has been witnessed there. Now, Kota barrage from Chambal River has seen that there in the region there has been destruction of the nest which has been built by the endangered Indian skimmer, and therefore Bombay Natural History Society has been working for the conservation of the same. Also, the hand, foot and mouth disease are on rise in the regions of Chennai. It is a contagious viral disease among children which causes rashes and ulcer, and 1 in 10 children is contracted with this disease. So those are some of the topics that we have discussed for today. Some of the topics have been extremely important. For example, the topic on stubble burning, the topic on hand, foot and mouth disease, the endangered Indian skimmer, we have talked about pentanal, also the inequalities, the impact onto the environment, the marine heat waves. Those are some of the extremely important topics which can be part of your prelims next year as per some of the conventional questions that are asked. So stay tuned for a regular update on Down to Earth, and the handouts for the same are available on Examrace current affairs section, so don't miss those. Have a wonderful day ahead.